Hey, thanks everybody for showing up for another episode of Ask a Therapist. I'm here with Paul Myers, and Paul's one of our therapists that we recommend folks to a lot. And Paul particularly works with adolescents. But Paul, if you wouldn't mind, would you mind kind of just introducing yourself for just a moment? Thank you for doing this, by the way.
Sure, yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me on. So Paul Myers, licensed professional counselor, owner of Intentional Counseling here in Frisco. We're a group practice that's biblically based counseling. Everyone's licensed there. And most of my practice is specializing in teenagers and young adults, particularly in boys or young men. And then I do see a lot of marriages and a lot of couples as well.
Awesome.
And of course, there's depression and anxiety, and pretty much any demographic as well. I get that call a lot. But
Yeah.
as far as speciality, yeah, mostly teenagers is kind of my niche. Yeah.
Awesome. That's really, I think, going to be helpful for us because I know I have teenagers at home, and a lot of folks are probably helping. They're trying to find some ways to navigate that season, and so a couple questions for you. So if my teen is a little distant from me, what would be some ways I could connect with them a little bit better during this time of social distancing and kind of them being at home? So how could I do a better job of connecting with them?
Sure. So, some disconnect is normal, obviously, in the life stage of an adolescent. We kind of expect that, right? You ask them a question, how was your day? And you get a one-word answer, oh, it was fine, right? And everything's fine, right? And so usually that's not the case. Usually there's always more to it. There's more to the story. And most teens really don't feel comfortable opening up to their parents because you have a lot of power over them as a parent, right? So if they share something maybe and you don't respond well, or you respond with anger, or you make it about your feelings, or you respond with negativity, right? Or maybe you just don't have a whole lot to say, and so they feel rejected or maybe judged, or it falls on deaf ears, right? Or maybe they're fearful of being punished for it, right? So these are kind of the common misconceptions that teens have that could explain why they're distancing themselves, or why they don't feel that comfortable opening up to a parent, right? Part of it is normal again, but sometimes it's exaggerated, and they make assumptions about you as a parent or your intentions as a parent, right? So most teenagers, at the end of the day, they really do crave conversation. They really do want to talk and connect, but they don't have a whole lot of emotional maturity to be really vulnerable, right? So as nice as it would be to have your teen come to you and say, hey, I'd really like to connect with you and spend more time, but we don't get that mature response a lot of the time. So it's really up to us as parents to initiate that connection and let our kids know we're available for them and that we do care. We do have their best interest in mind. We do have good intentions for them, and we do long for connection with them, right?
Yeah.
Typically, boys will connect a little differently than girls. If you approach your teen consistently, making yourself available, stating your intentions, that you like time with them for no other reason other than you love them, you care about them, and you want to connect, right? That will do a lot of things, even if they don't take you up on the offer, or they turn you down. You've still done a lot of good, actually, where they're seeing you as more available and they're seeing you accurately, right? So I see a lot of parents, maybe they try, they get rejected, and over time they give up and they get discouraged, right? So don't do that. Be consistent at offering your time and your love and your affection, whether that's verbally or with your time or with your money. There's ways to kind of pour into your teen. Don't stop doing that. That does matter. And be consistent, and eventually you'll get that time where they are actually, yeah, I did have this going on, I do want to open up, or they'll approach you at a time maybe where you weren't expecting it, right?
Yeah.
Boys tend to connect through activity. So when I'm seeing teenagers or boys or young adults, sometimes I'll play board games, or or card games, and we'll just kind of connect that way by doing something together. It makes them more comfortable. They don't like to sit and talk and square up about their feelings a lot. And so just kind of taking the edge off by doing something really does matter. It's a big difference, right?
Yeah.
With
I was a
girls,
youth
it's different though.
Yeah, I was a youth pastor for a number of years, and it was so funny that I never just had a lot of conversations with the boys where we just sat down and talked. But if we went up to our youth center and played pool or played foosball, played video games, and next thing you know, they're talking away and they're kind of sharing.
Oh yeah.
And and I love your advice about we're not necessarily there to, a lot of it is just to listen, not put that judgment upon them, because if we start to judge right away, they're going to shut down pretty quickly. But kind of even step back from that and listen to them a little bit. So.
No, you're right. I mean, I get about 180% more out of boys just by doing something with them. And boys are really big on respect. As a male, like males really like respect. We're just wired that way. So if you treat them with respect, like treat them like an adult, even though they're not, but if you treat them that way, you'll get respect back, right?
Yeah.
Teenagers only care about trust and respect. They don't care about my degrees and my credentials, my knowledge, my background. They don't care, right?
Yeah.
And most teenagers discredit their parents, right? Like, oh, you can't possibly know things.
My dog is barking over here. This is the thrill of live entertainment. Here's my dog barking away.
Yeah.
My wife's trying to get him, and he's not moving. He's okay, honey. He's all right. All right.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, Paul.
Oh, you're good. We'll make it work. Yeah.
So, if you have what do you do if you have like a defiant teen, and how can you help them to, even be more responsible with schoolwork, things around the house? How can you help a defiant teen during this time?
Sure. So I always tell people there's two kinds of kids, right? There's kids that learn vicariously. They learn through observation, or they learn from you just by watching you, or they learn from an older sibling from watching them, or a friend. If you're lucky enough to have one of those kids, really, milk that.
Yeah.
But particularly defiant kids are not that way. They're not going to learn through observation vicariously. They're not really auditory learners where you can just have a conversation and then they retain that, right? So with defiant kids and defiant teens in particular, those are the kids that are learning the hard way, right? And so typically the only way they learn is through experience, right? Experience is the best teacher. So, I like to imagine if you can take a kid's or a teenager's experiences and maybe personify that into a cartoon character, what would it be saying, right? And that's typically what they're going to believe, right? From age 0 to age 13, 14, their developmental years, we kind of just naturally sponge everything in at face value and take it in as normal, right? So, if I have a maid and a $6 million home and all the money in the world and no responsibility, my experience teaches me that I'm not responsible for anything really. And that everything is just basically handed to me, right? As an extreme example, but that's gonna matter more than what you tell your kid even at times, right? So the type of environment you set up with their experiences they're teaching a particularly defiant kid is going to matter more than what you're telling them with your words, right? You can certainly explain things with your words, but if the experiences don't back up what you're saying with your words, it essentially is discredited and ineffective or even counterproductive, right? So we're trying to set up the experience that a child has that is strong-willed or stubborn or has a rebellion blood to where they are responsible for them, right? And the experience is set up to teach them they're responsible for them. So that means when they make good choices, there's tangible repercussions of that are positive, versus if you make a bad choice, there's tangible repercussions that are negative, in the game, where if there's real skin in the game, it actually kind of starts hurting a little bit, then you care more and you remember that, ow, that hurt, and that will register, right? So some kids learn that way, and as parents, we hate that, right? Everything in us wants to protect our kids. We want their life to be easy. We don't want them to suffer. We want to spare them that struggle. out of love for them, great intentions, normal if you love your kids, but really at times doing a disservice to a kid that needs to learn the hard way, right? So what we're doing by saving our kid from suffering, we're really just actually stripping them from learning and developing. They need the experience of making choices and the freedom to make that choice and to suffer the consequences of those choices, good or bad. And that's really scary to allow a teenager to do because they're not really adults yet. They don't have fully developed brains. They can make bad choices.
Yeah.
And so as a parent, it brings a lot of fear and anxiety on us. But I just want to encourage people to fight through that. And it does get better. And the Bible says you train up a child in the way they should go, they won't depart from it. They may kind of have their own bad decision making. Prodigal son's a prime example. But eventually they're going to learn the hard way or the easy way that what you say is accurate, right?
Yeah.
So we just want to give them that experience.
So, like for example, right now with all the online learning that we're doing, the at-home learning, and so if you have a defiant teen that's just not willing to engage with that process, are you kind of encouraging us to, I mean, to make sure we're trying to help them, but at the same time, their experience is going to dictate if they start to fail, then they're going to learn the hard way. Is that kind of what you're encouraging?
Yeah, some kids have to fail to learn, right? Not all kids are that way, but if you have a kid that has ODD, ADD, ADHD, bipolar, or some type of developmental disorder or reactive attachment disorder, mood disorders, more severe cases where you have a strong-willed kid, emotional disturbance. These kids tend to learn harder and the more difficult way. They take the more difficult path, right?
Yeah.
So that's the way. Sometimes it takes them failing and having to do summer school or have a lot of freedoms and privileges stripped from them, and they have to kind of feel that consequence a little bit to get with the program. That really does help them a lot, even though it's hard. Yeah.
Yeah, that is hard to do as parents because you know the long term consequences, but really, like you said, you may be teaching them the wrong lessons by trying to bail them out too. So,
Correct.
uh, one of the things that's interesting this time is like we have a little more time around social media. We're encouraged to be on our computers even more. And so, what advice would you give parents if maybe they have a preteen and kind of helping them navigate kind of that social media kind of online world a little bit during this time?
Yeah, so it's a different age. I used to be of the school of thought that as a parent, you want to give your kid some privacy and that respect of that privacy. Those days are long gone. With the way technology has gone, how rapidly it's advanced, kids are essentially they're mini adults, right? So everything that you and I maybe would have been exposed to in the 80s or the 90s by the age of 25 is essentially what these kids are exposed to by the age of 8, 9, right? And they don't have the emotional capacity to handle all of that, right? So technology is not this harmless thing that, oh, it's just normal. Well, it is normal, but that doesn't necessarily make it healthy, right? Um, so the technology that particularly has a lot of destructive effect on human development are typically ones that have a high dopamine release that have very high addictive properties to them, right? So examples would be social media, particularly Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, right? Or things where you get an immediate dopamine release, immediate stimulation, immediate gratification, and a false synthetic reality, right? Where they feel synthetically as if they have keys to their own world. It increases the self-focus. It makes you feel connected without actually making you connected. You're not developing social skills, and it's highly addictive, right? So it really feeds those dopamine responses of, now, more, immediate, immediate, immediate. I get those likes, I get the followers, I get friends, I get feedback, and it's the wrong negative kind of self-focused attention that we really don't want our kids dependent on, right? Other addictive forms of communication and technology would be YouTube or online gaming. A lot of the times highly addictive, and it's essentially just another social media platform because you can communicate freely, right? So obviously, we really, as parents, have a responsibility to limit and monitor these things for our kids, right? Some doctors and psychologists are recommending 2 hours a day. That's almost impossible right now with the virus going on, and obviously everyone's quarantined right now, and they're on online school. But on a normal day-to-day basis, hopefully this all blows over. Fingers crossed. We can establish some normalcy and keep that technology time down or limited. Right. The other thing is, I would strongly recommend you have full access to that device, and you're informed. You know what your kid is looking up. You know what your kid is doing online, who they're talking to. Be involved, right? Um, you may get some pushback from your kid, but at the end of the day, they do feel cared about, right? That you care enough to be involved and to protect them, educate them on the dangers and the consequences of these things, right? You know, I don't know anybody who would hand their kid cocaine, anyone in the right mind at least. And so technology is essentially like that. It's like handing your kid a tier 3, tier 4 drug, right? As far as if we look at an EEG scan and the dopamine release and the addictive properties of technology, it's equivalent to about a tier 3, tier 4 drug. That's a big deal, right? And so the earlier your child is at the introduction of technology, typically the more potency, the more addictive it's going to be. And it actually rewires your neurochemistry and your brain wiring, right? So it's not a harmless thing. You do want to monitor that. You want to be involved. You want to care. You don't want to just hand them a device early on and let them have free reign on Google, YouTube, social media. It's super dangerous. There's a lot of ramifications to that.
Yeah, so it sounds like from my perspective as a parent, really kind of what you're, if I had some overarching guiding principles, you're saying, stay involved, even if they kind of keep pushing back a little bit, but keep pursuing, letting them know, keep pursuing, let them know you love them, you're there for them, maybe get involved in some of their activities with them, and do monitor their social media because it can really be a kind of destructive thing that can really kind of grab a hold of them that will be a long journey of getting out of that struggle too. And so, um, but Paul, thank you so much for your time, and this has been really incredible. I mean, I'm just sitting there just absorbing all this as a parent, and then also too, a lot of times, especially during this time, we're trying to do social distancing. If people need to reach out to you, they can go to our website, hopefellowship.net/counselors. You're on there. There's telehealth that you're doing, so people can even reach out to you and have a conversation like this for some therapy. And so, Paul, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for all that you do to kind of help out people in this area. And so, man, I'm really appreciative. So thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you having me on. And yeah, if you need me, let me know. I'm available, and we'll go from there.
Okay, thanks, Paul.
Ask